Well, it is a wet Friday in Tennessee. Welcome to the live stream. We are coming directly from the Huckabee Theater, just outside of Nashville, where we'll be taping our show this weekend. We have a lot of great things on the show that you will not want to miss. But joining me right now, senior producer for the show, Pam Case, and we're very happy to have you as we are live, and we're going to be taking questions that you will send in. So, Pam, we'll be seeing what people have on their mind today.
Yes, and looking forward to chatting with them and participating in our polls.
Yeah.
And
Now
hanging out with us.
I guess we're going to start out with this, the pre-show poll
Yes.
to find out what people are already thinking, right?
Yes, we are,
Okay.
although I can't see it.
Oh, well.
In a totally peaceful fight with Biden,
Mm-hmm.
which one wins fastest? Here we go.
Okay.
A teleprompter, senility, a hand puppet, or Kamala's laugh.
Ooh. Read it again.
Okay. Yeah. In a totally peaceful fight with Biden,
Mm-hmm.
which wins fastest? All right. Teleprompter, senility, hand puppet, or Kamala's laugh.
Can't wait to hear these results. What are
Well,
they?
Okay. 36% hand puppets,
Okay.
30 teleprompter,
Hmm.
senility at 25%, and Kamala's laugh at 10.
Wow. I would have thought that would have been higher.
Oh, her laugh?
Yeah, I would have.
Really?
Not that it would have been entertaining or enjoyable, but I just thought more people would have thought that maybe that laugh would have won. Anyway, fascinating.
I'm on the other side of that boat. I would have thought, really? 10%? What? Anyway, what? I don't know.
Well. Well, we got a lot to cover today. We're going to talk about Russia and China's growing relationship, what that could spell for the rest of us. Also, CNN calls it like it is. Well, kind of, sort of. And that's regarding Joe Biden and the China business connections, but at least they're getting closer. And footage emerges, this is amazing, of Anthony Fauci promoting vaccines door-to-door to people in Washington, D.C. I think he thought he was going to get all the love. It didn't go that well. We'll show you some of that video in the course of the day. I hope that you will also be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Hit the notification bell. Pop that like button so that we can know that our viewers are telling other people about it. Share it with others. All of those things are important. I know we say do all these things, but the reason is that, just to be honest with you, live streams like ours are not the favorite of some of the social media companies. So our way of getting to more people is having engagement from you. So the more you engage with us by subscribing, liking, commenting, all of those things, hitting the notification bell, that is called engagement. And the more of that we get, the more people actually see our stuff. You'd think everybody could see it if they wanted to. It doesn't work that way with social media companies. We always like to have our favorite comment of the week. And this comes from last week's live stream and Leonard Smith with a great impression of Kamala Harris. He says, if sincerity is sincere enough, could we all be sincerely sincere? Asking for Kamala. I love that. That was so
absolutely.
Clever.
Yes.
And pretty much spot on for a
Absolutely.
Kamala Harris speech,
Yeah.
for sure. So the question of this week is this. We'd love to get your comments, and you can begin sending them to us immediately. Will Donald Trump be indicted by the New York grand jury? Leave your answers in the chat or the comments section below. We'd love to hear from you starting now. So we want to get to some of our stories today. The first one is that the White House seems to just be, I don't know, off track somehow. You would think that they would have a clear understanding that people care about the economy, national security, our border. But the Secretary of Health and Human Services, Xavier Becerra, brags about not making America healthier, not making prescription drugs more affordable. No, he's got something that really, really is his highest agenda. And this is pretty amazing. Climate change. Watch this.
Establish a climate change and health equity office at the Department of Health and Human Services, not the EPA, at HHS. We established an environmental justice office, not in the Department of Justice, but in HHS. Because we know that the folks who are hit first and worst when it comes to climate degradation are in the minority communities.
I honestly cannot believe what I watched just then. An environmental justice officer. Because if you're poor and living out somewhere in America, barely making it, the thing you are interested in most is an environmental justice officer. And to have somebody looking after climate change. What's wrong with these people?
Just add it to the list, Gov.
My gosh. And the sad thing is, our taxpayers, our tax dollars, we're funding that. We're funding these people and these new jobs they create for some do-gooders sitting around twiddling their thumbs and pretending to be important, changing the world. It's insane. Joe Biden tries to read a poem this week at the White House. It's cringeworthy. Okay, so he's got the poet who wrote the poem. The poem was originally recited at Barack Obama's second inauguration. And I don't know why the poet was at the White House. We don't really get that part of it. But he was there, and I think Joe Biden thought how nice it would be for me to quote from that poem. Well, it would be if Joe could read. Watch.
Richard Blanco returned to a poem he wrote from the second inaugural of Barack and me. A poem, one today. It says, and always one moon like a silent drum tapping at every rooftop and every window on every of every country. Let me start this over again. I'm getting so intimidated by being here. And always one moon like a silent drum tapping on every rooftop and every window of one county.
Country. He never got it right. It's sad. It's less than a page in big print, and he could not get through it. Joe, don't do poetry. It just doesn't work. I mean, again, it's painful to watch that.
You know what? I have to give him props, though, for the part where he said he was just intimidated by the poet being there. I think, and you know, I mean, I thought he came up with that pretty quick.
Well, I guess so.
That's pretty good.
How is the President of the United States intimidated by a poet?
Well, of course.
I mean,
I don't.
Asking for a friend. Really?
Yeah, I know.
I'm President of the United States. I'm the most powerful person in the world. But I'm intimidated. There's a guy here in the audience. He is a poet. Nothing disrespect about poets. You're valuable people. We love you very dearly. But if you intimidate the president, something's wrong with the president that is intimidated by a poet.
There's that.
It's kind of like, if you're afraid of clowns.
I am afraid of clowns. Do you know
really?
that?
No, I didn't.
It's a whole other story for another day, Gov.
That's disturbing. All right. Well, those weren't the only ones. Pete Buttigieg, better known as Mayor Pete, better known as an incompetent, bumbling idiot who just doesn't know what his job is. But he's Secretary of Transportation for reasons that never have made sense. But he wants to talk about the transportation system. And again, by the way, it's not about roads and bridges and airports and sewer systems. Nope. It's all about climate change. Watch.
Today at a moment of historic challenge as well as opportunity in our transportation systems as they cope with profoundly disruptive forces that include continued shockwaves from the coronavirus pandemic, increasing threats from climate change, and the effects of decades of disinvestment.
Okay. That's about the only thing he said that has anything to do with the transportation infrastructure. If we didn't do things that we should have been doing to fix roads and bridges and sewers and airports and ports and so on. But the idea that somehow these threats are the result of climate change, I just don't know where that comes from. But this is the guy who said that interstate highways were racist. Somehow he was able to equate racism to having highways. Go figure. All right. This week was a big moment. Russia and China, their leaders get together. Putin and President Xi of China meet, and boy, did they ever, as we used to say in Arkansas, they put on the dogs. And I would say they did, but in China they would eat them, so they probably didn't put them on. But this is just a little bit of the ceremony that you're going to see with Putin and Xi walking into the room together. And They both had these long, long ceremonial walks and then ended up meeting by their respective flags with music that sounded like it came from the Olympics playing in the background. Now, one of the things they talked about was that Russia is going to start using the Chinese yuan instead of US dollars to settle their trade with Asia, Africa, and Latin America. This may not seem like a big deal. It is a big deal, and here's why. The US dollar has been really the global standard for trade, and it's one of the reasons that our economy ends up being stronger than most, even when there is a recession, because the dollar is still the world standard. It's very obvious that China wants to take that from us and to make the Chinese yuan the international standard. Russia takes the bait. Of course they do. They hate us. And so they're the first of the big countries that have decided to go this direction. If this were to become epidemic, it would have severe consequences to our economy. It would mean that inflation would explode and the value of the dollar would go dramatically down, meaning devastating impact upon American families. So keep your eyes on that because it's not something that is unimportant. Now, in the midst of that, we've been saying for weeks that Joe Biden may be the most compromised president in history as it relates to China because of the business deals that Joe, his brother, his son, and their associates have had with the Communist Chinese Party in business. And we're not talking about the business deals that all happened between the time he was vice president and became president. These are deals that were fostered when he was vice president and have continued unto today. Joe Biden has asked about this $1 million payment that was made by the Communist Chinese. They send it to Hunter Biden's company, and then he divvies it out. Some of it goes to Joe Biden's brother Jim, some goes to Hunter, some, for some reason that makes no sense to anyone, goes to Hallie Biden, who is the widow of Joe's deceased son, Beau, who became the lover for a brief time of Hunter Biden, which is really creepy in itself that happened. But she's a school counselor, and she ended up getting money for some Chinese business deal. But I want you to see when Joe's confronted with it, he's out on the South Lawn, you can tell he doesn't really want to talk about it.
Any reaction to House GOP's memo about your family dealings, sir? Any reaction to House GOP's new memo about your family dealings, sir?
Family dealings.
Yes, you're revealing that Hunter Biden's business associates sent over $1 million to 3 of your family members. Any reaction to that report?
Not true.
Do you have any reaction to the Russian jet that took down the U.S. drone, Mr. President?
The visual of that is stunning. He says, not true. Well, it is true. Joe, it's documented. I mean, it's your own records we have. But the worst is he doesn't just turn and walk away. He just starts backing up like, I got to get out of here. It is really very awkward to watch that.
Yeah.
Just see him kind of back up with that dazed look in his face like, where's that Easter bunny?
Yeah, I was going to say, a year ago, coming up on a year ago, we watched the Easter bunny help him off the lawn. So
they need to get that Easter bunny.
need to bring that bunny back.
That bunny needs to be out on the South Lawn every time Joe goes to the helicopter.
That's what I'm thinking.
Bring the bunny. Cue the bunny. Get him or her or whatever kind of bunny it is back out here. Let me tell you how bad it's gotten. Even CNN is beginning to say something doesn't smell right. This is Aaron Burnett on CNN just this week.
Certain level of, just as a layperson, you hear this, and it doesn't sound good. There's a guy whose name is John Robinson Walker. He gets $3 million from a Chinese space company and proceeds to wire it out to a bunch of people named Biden, one of whom is Hunter Biden. Another one is a company that belongs to the president's brother, James Biden, and another amount of money to Beau Biden's widow, Hallie. So, again, from a layperson, that doesn't look good.
Yeah, it doesn't look good from a layperson, and obviously doesn't look really good from a newscaster either, because Aaron Burnett had to bring it up and even admitted it just doesn't look good. Well, it doesn't look good, and there's a reason it doesn't look good, because it isn't good. Now we just have to wonder, will the mainstream press get curious enough about all of this to sort it out? Time will tell. We want to remind you, hit the subscribe button, the notification bell. Let us know that you are tuned in, and we'll be notified the next time we have a live stream. Be sure to like our live stream and share it with others so they can join in watching. We're going to go to some of your questions. Pam has been fielding some that you are sending in. So, Pam, what do we have?
All right, well, we started with a pre-show poll today where we asked, in a totally peaceful fight with Biden, which wins fastest, and the hand puppet won. Will Fowler, with a super chat, said, I think Biden is the hand puppet for the Democrats. He can't even win against himself.
Wow.
So there you go.
Good quote.
Yeah. All right, so Billy Jones asking today, Governor Huckabee, why does Democrats in Washington, I guess, not believe that parents should provide input to their children's education?
That's pretty scary. Just today, in fact, the House voted, and of course the House controlled by the Republicans right now, but they voted on a Parental Rights Act for American parents, saying moms and dads should ultimately have the decisions about their children. Not one Democrat voted for that. I find that disturbing. You know, sometimes there's a bill that's innocuous enough. It's like, I believe in sunlight. Okay, yeah, let's go ahead and vote for that. We're so divided and polarized that you put something out there that says parents ought to be the ones who are most responsible for their children. The Democrats say, no, we don't believe that. In fact, they went further. Some of them said that to vote for that bill would be fascism. Fascism. I'm disturbed by that because it's like the Democrats don't even know what the word means. Fascism is not mothers and fathers raising their own children. Fascism is when the government takes your children from you and they raise them for you and they tell you how they will be raised and you have no say in the matter. That's a form of totalitarianism. That's fascism. The Democrats don't seem to understand what it is, and they can lie all they want and say, oh, we wouldn't vote for that bill because it's fascist. You ought to worry about a political party that thinks the government ought to be raising your children instead of you, that thinks that your values aren't as good as the ones that the politicians would impose upon your children.
Now, I don't know if you want to do this or not, Governor, but we do have in our list of clips today that very subject. If you wanted to go on and roll that, we sure do.
Let's look at it.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I see access as a problem. I see parents being able to direct their child's education, and they are already in the lower 25 percentile, meaning a lot of those parents did not finish high school and could not finish their own education. I am extremely concerned that we would put money in their hands in that entire piece of life in the hands of parents who are not qualified to make those decisions.
Now, it's interesting, this particular member of Congress who says that parents shouldn't be making the decision about putting their children in schools other than the ones that the government assigns their children to go to. What makes this so fascinating, because this member of Congress essentially says parents, particularly poor parents, are too stupid to know what's best for their kids. They're not smart enough. They wouldn't make the best decisions, so we're going to make those decisions for those parents. You know what's really interesting? That member of Congress has her own children in private schools. Can you say hypocrisy? Because that's what it is when people want you to live by a rule they don't live by themselves. So she says, you, the general public, you're too stupid to make decisions about where your kids go to school. But she, a valued member of Congress, should be given that privilege, and by golly, she will exercise it. That is disturbing,
yes,
for sure.
Absolutely. Angela Gillette this afternoon says, good afternoon, Mike. I have a concern that we're going to be going to war with Syria. Is this true? And would love to have your thoughts on that. I think the answer is no. We're not going to go to war with Syria. I can't imagine why we would. There's really nothing there that we have an interest in. We are aware today that the Biden administration fired some missiles into Syria in retaliation about Iranians shooting down or using a drone to kill an American. That was a proper response. It was sort of a tit for tat, which that's the way it should be handled. No outrageous kind of escalation of war, and I have no reason to think whatsoever that there would be a basis for us to get into Syria. There just isn't. They're so messed up with their own civil war that basically we need to stand back and let them have at it. There's nothing for us to get involved in.
Okay.
One more, and then we're going to go to some very fascinating video.
All right. A question from Lois Reed this afternoon. Do executive orders pertain only to federal employees?
Yes. A president can't issue an executive order that dictates to a state or its policies. So it's limited to things that are under the control of the executive branch. Now, Barack Obama and Joe Biden have both issued executive orders that I think were beyond the pale of being constitutional. They basically legislated with an executive order. Here's an example. When Joe Biden said that they were going to do the student loan forgiveness, he didn't have the authority to do that. And if he had pushed it, I'm sure somebody would have filed a federal lawsuit to go straight to the Supreme Court because he doesn't have the power to appropriate. That is exclusively the power of Congress, who's the only one who has the power of the purse. You remember Barack Obama said, I've got a pen and I've got a phone. And he used it. And I thought that the Republicans, particularly under John Boehner and Paul Ryan, were wusses. Let me be clear, wusses, because they let him get away with it. They didn't fight back. And what they should have done is an immediate lawsuit challenging the constitutionality of some of these things that were done as executive orders. Here's what a president, or at the state level, a governor can do with an executive order. You can say, this agency over which I have control, because it's an executive branch agency, must do X, Y, and Z. That's an executive order. But you can't tell Congress what it will do. You can't do things that would spend money that has not already been appropriated by Congress. There are severe limits to what an executive order can accomplish. And for the most part, it is an expression of desire or a sort of a written declaration of what you want something to be, not necessarily what it's going to be. Well, speaking of people who have overstepped their bounds, I think maybe most of us would agree that Dr. Anthony Fauci elevated himself to a position just above that of Pope itself. It's been amazing. So Fauci goes out to neighborhoods in Washington, D.C. with a cadre of people knocking on doors and trying to push vaccinations. I think it's interesting where he blames the whole issue of people resistant to vaccinations and basically blames COVID on Republicans. Let's watch.
What are we going to do about those other states?
Oh, my God. They're going to keep the outbreak smoldering in the country. It's so crazy. I mean, they're not doing it because they say they don't want to do it. They're Republicans. They don't like to be told what to do. Right. And we got to break that, unpack that.
How you guys doing with vaccine?
You have to wonder, did Fauci not realize the camera was rolling and there was audio of that? Because it makes him look like the partisan hack that he is, blaming that Republicans don't like to be told what to do. Fauci, let me tell you something. That's not just Republicans. Nobody with his brain screwed on right wants to be told by the government what to do. It's not what freedom means. It's just insane. So he's going door to door. This particular moment didn't go real well.
People in America are not settled with the information that's been given to us right now. So I'm not going to be lining up taking a shot or a vaccination for something that wasn't clear in the first place. And then you all create a shot in miraculous time. It takes years to create vaccination.
Well, it used to take years.
Okay, it used to. You know
how many years were invested in this approach? About 20 years of science to get us to be able to do it.
20 years is not enough. And 9 months is definitely not enough for nobody to be taking no vaccination that you all came up with.
The dude didn't want to take the shot. I mean, it becomes pretty clear. I find it interesting. Where was Tony Fauci's mask? I thought this was going to save the planet if we all had a mask on. He didn't have one on.
Yeah.
How interesting. But again, this is typical for people like Tony Fauci. He tells us what to do, but he doesn't necessarily want to do it himself. I thought this was a very powerful moment this week in the U.S. Senate in a hearing where Rand Paul, Kentucky senator, confronts the CEO of Moderna, one of the manufacturers of the initial vaccines, and points out that Moderna gave the National Institutes of Health $400 million in royalties, and whether or not this might be a conflict of interest. Let's watch.
Do you believe it creates a conflict of interest for the government employees who are making money now off of the vaccine to also be dictating the policy about how many times we have to take the vaccine?
Good morning, Senator. Indeed, we recently made, before Christmas last year, a $400 million payment to the NIH.
Yeah, basically, we wrote that big check. Oh, of course, we didn't expect anything in return. We're not that stupid. We just are not. Let's take a couple of questions.
All right. Steph Goebel is asking, Gov, two folks have mentioned to me recently that income tax is going to be abolished. Is there any truth to what I've heard? One friend said that that's why he asked for an extension till October.
There is a greater chance that I will announce that I'm transgender than that income tax is going to be eliminated before your next tax bill is due. So please file the extension if you need the extra time, but it will not mean that your taxes are going to be eliminated. The only way we would eliminate income tax is passing the fair tax, something I strongly propose, advocate, and will continue to try to push for. But it would take years if we started today to get it all implemented. So I'd go ahead and file your taxes if I were you.
Bear Ashby is asking, why should the American people need a bill to protect us as parents to raise our kids? That's a good question.
It is a good question. The reason that you do is because right now government is continually usurping the authority of parents. This would prohibit that, and it would make it clear in statute that parents have ultimate responsibility and not the government, and that's why it would set a precedent. I want to go to a couple of clips because these are just too good to miss. One of them is an incident where 5 African-American men are dressed as women, and you're not going to believe this, they're talking about cultural appropriation of people who are culturally appropriating things that are related to Africa and Black people. Watch.
I feel like there's such a long-rooted history in appropriation from Black culture.
I want to get the one about the hawk. Well, here's what's amazing about that one. These are men who are appropriating women or womanhood, and they're pretending to be women, but they're concerned that somebody might say something that would be Black, and that would be appropriation. But the greatest all of the clips this week, this is one where there's this young lady, and if you want to know how silly, how idiotic, how absolutely mind-bending stupid people have become, people who believe that you can just project yourself to be something that you clearly are not, and that makes it so. I can decide that I'm a woman, or I can decide I'm 20 years old, I can decide whatever I want. And you have to accept it, and you have to acknowledge it that way, and you have to treat me, and even use the pronouns that I demand of you. Well, here is maybe the most glaring example of how silly this can become. Watch this young lady as she declares herself to be something other than a person.
My name is Horace, and I'm a red-tailed hawk. In our world, I do have the body of a hawk, but while fronting, I consider myself a Therian, because I am in a human body, but my identity is still a hawk. Not all animal alters will identify this way, and I am, in fact, the only animal alter in our system who does identify this way. I am doing my best to come to terms with living in a human body.
Yeah, you're really doing your best to come to terms with more than being in a human body. It's like being out of body and out of your mind. That is just, have you ever heard anything quite like that?
No, absolutely not. And my favorite part is just waiting for your reaction.
But this
because
is like,
really?
Yeah, this is like a skit from
Saturday Night Live.
Saturday Night Live.
Seriously.
Yeah. I'm a hawk. I'm in a human body, but I identify as a hawk. Lady, you need to shut your beak, stick to the seed, but for God's sake, get help. You truly, honestly need it. Hey, be sure to leave your questions in the comments section. We'll continue to read them even after we're off the air. As we've said to you before, hit the subscribe button, the like button, click the notification bell. Be sure to join us next time. We'll be back with another live stream a week from today.